My name is Emily. I am 26 years old. And today, I am shaking as I speak. Why? Because this is not an easy story. This is not a happy story. It is a story of pain, fear, and shame. I never thought I would share it. But maybe someone out there, maybe you need to hear it. So I will try. I grew up in a small town. Quiet streets. Old houses. People who knew each other's names. Life was simple there. But I always dreamed of something more. When I finished school, I packed my bags. I said goodbye to my parents. And I moved to the city. The city was big, loud, bright. It scared me, but it also made me feel alive. I wanted a career. I wanted independence. I wanted to prove to myself that I was strong. After weeks of searching, I found a job. It was at an office downtown. The building was tall, with glass walls that shone in the sunlight. I remember walking in on my first day. The smell of coffee. The sound of keyboards clicking. Men and women in suits. I felt so small. But I also felt proud. This is my chance, I told myself. My boss's name was Richard. He was in his 40s. Sharp suit, polished shoes, a smile that looked friendly. At first. On my first day, he shook my hand. "Welcome, Emily," he said. His voice was deep, confident. "I'm sure you'll do great here." I smiled. "Thank you, sir. I'll try my best." And I did. I worked hard. I stayed late. I wanted to prove that I belonged. Weeks passed. Richard started noticing me. At first, it felt good. He praised my work in meetings. He said things like, "You are smart, Emily. We need more people like you." I felt proud. I felt seen. But slowly, something changed. One evening, the office was almost empty. The sun was setting outside. The floor was quiet, except for the hum of the air conditioner. I was finishing a report at my desk. Richard walked by. He stopped. He leaned over my shoulder to look at the screen. His face was close. Too close. "You're doing great," he whispered. I froze. His hand touched my shoulder. Just for a second. But my whole body stiffened. I laughed nervously. Thank you," I said. I didn't know what else to say. He smiled. "Don't stay too late, Emily. You deserve rest." Then he walked away. My heart was racing. It was just a hand on the shoulder, right? Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe it meant nothing. But deep inside, I felt uneasy. The next morning, I told myself, "Forget it. Don't make it a big deal. He's just being kind." I pushed the thought away. I wanted this job. I needed this job. But still, I could not forget the way I froze. I could not forget how close he stood. And I wondered, was this only the beginning? That night, I lay in bed. The city lights glowed through my window. I stared at the ceiling. I remembered my parents' words before I left home. "Stay safe, Emily. Be careful who you trust." And I thought, am I safe here? Can I trust my boss? Days turned into weeks. Richard kept giving me extra work, kept calling me into his office, kept smiling at me in a way I could not explain. I wanted to believe it was all in my head. I wanted to believe he was just kind. But the feeling in my stomach told me otherwise. One Friday evening, something happened. Something I could not ignore. The office was quiet again. Most people had left for the weekend. I was gathering my things, ready to go home. "Emily," Richard's voice called. Can you come to my office for a moment? My hands tightened around my bag. I walked slowly to his door. He was sitting at his desk. The window behind him showed the city lights flickering in the night. Close the door, he said. My heart dropped. I closed it. I stood there, nervous.
Yes, sir.
He got up from his chair. He walked around the desk. He stood close. Too close. You've been working hard, he said softly. You deserve something special.
And then,
his hand touched my arm. I froze again. My chest felt tight. My mind screamed, no. But my voice was silent. That moment changed everything. I was not imagining it. It was real. It was happening. And I knew my life at that office would never be the same again. I stood there in his office, frozen. His hand rested on my arm. It felt heavy, wrong. I wanted to move away, but my feet would not move. Finally, I pulled back. Thank you, sir, I said quickly. My voice shook.
I should go now.
Richard smiled. A strange smile. Of course, he said. But remember, I notice you, Emily. Don't forget that. I hurried out of the room. My heart pounded in my chest. The hallway felt long, like a tunnel I could not escape. That night, I cried in my apartment. Tears rolled down my face. I hugged my pillow. I kept asking myself, did I do something wrong? Did I make him think he could touch me? But then another voice whispered inside me, no, you did nothing. It's not your fault. Still, the shame sat heavy in my chest. I could not sleep. The next morning, I called my mom. Her voice was warm, soft, like home. Hi, sweetheart.
How are you?
I wanted to tell her. I wanted to say, Mom, my boss touched me. I feel scared. But the words would not come out. Instead, I said, I'm fine, Mom. Just tired. She sighed. You work too hard, Emily. Remember to rest. And eat. Don't forget to eat. I closed my eyes. Her love gave me comfort, but I felt alone with my secret. At work, things continued. Richard kept acting friendly in front of others, but when no one was around, his eyes changed. His voice lowered. His hands tried to reach me again. Once in the break room, I was pouring coffee. He walked in. He stood behind me, too close. His hand brushed against my waist. I jumped back. My coffee spilled.
Careful, he said, smiling.
Then he walked away like nothing happened. I stood there, shaking, with coffee dripping down my hand. I wanted to tell someone, but who would believe me? He was the boss. Everyone respected him. Everyone thought he was kind. If I said something, maybe they would laugh. Maybe they would say, you are young, Emily. You don't understand. He didn't mean it. So I stayed silent. But I had one friend at the office. Her name was Sarah. She sat at the desk beside mine. She had kind eyes and a gentle smile. She often brought me cookies she baked at home. One afternoon, she looked at me carefully. Emily, are you okay? You look pale lately. I hesitated. Should I tell her? Could I trust her? I bit my lip. Then I whispered, Sarah, something is wrong. With Richard. Her face changed. What do you mean? I looked around. The office was busy. I leaned closer. He touches me sometimes, without permission. Sarah's eyes widened. Oh my God, are you serious? I nodded. Tears filled my eyes.
I don't know what to do.
She grabbed my hand under the desk. Her grip was warm, strong. Emily, you're not alone. You hear me?
Not alone.
Her words made me cry silently. Finally, someone believed me. That night, Sarah called me. Emily, I've been thinking.
You should report him.
My stomach twisted. Report him?
To who?
To Human Resources. Or maybe higher up. I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. No, I can't. What if they don't believe me?
What if I lose my job?
Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she said softly, Emily, your safety matters more than any job. Her words stayed in my head all night, but I was scared. I needed money. Rent was high. Food was expensive. I could not just leave. I thought about my parents. They worked so hard back in my small town. They had sent me to the city with hope in their hearts. I wanted to make them proud, not call them and say, I failed. I lost my job. So I kept going, day after day, walking into that office, smiling, pretending, but inside I was breaking. One evening, Sarah and I left work together. The sun was setting. The sky was pink and gold. We walked down the busy street. Cars honked. People hurried past. But I felt far away from it all. Sarah said, Emily, you can't carry this alone.
It will destroy you.
I looked at her with tired eyes. What if he ruins me, Sarah? He's powerful.
I'm nobody.
She stopped walking. She put her hands on my shoulders. You are not nobody. You are strong. And what he's doing is wrong. Her words touched me. But still, my fear was stronger. That weekend, I visited my parents. The air in my hometown was different. Fresh. Quiet. I sat on the porch with my dad. He looked at me and said, You seem troubled, Emily. Is something wrong at work? My throat closed. I wanted to tell him everything, but instead I forced a smile. No, Dad. Just a lot of work.
That's all.
He nodded slowly. You know you can tell us anything, right? I nodded back, but my secret stayed locked inside. On Sunday night, before returning to the city, I sat in my old bedroom. The posters on the wall reminded me of the girl I used to be. The girl who believed the world was full of dreams. Now, I felt like I was living in a nightmare. I whispered to myself, I have to be strong.
I will not let him break me.
But deep down, I was scared of what was coming. The next week, something happened that pushed everything further. Something I could not hide from anymore. It was late again. Most people had gone home. The office was dark, except for the glow of my computer screen. I was packing my bag when I heard footsteps.
Emily, Richard's voice said behind me.
I froze. He walked closer. His smile looked different this time. Not kind. Not friendly. It made my skin crawl. He stood beside me. His hand reached out again. But this time, it didn't stop at my arm. His hand touched me again. This time, not just my arm. It slid lower, down my back. I gasped. I pulled away quickly. Sir, please, I whispered. My voice was shaking. Richard tilted his head. Please?
Emily, don't be afraid of me.
His tone was soft, almost sweet, but his eyes felt sharp. I took a step back. I need to go home, I said. I grabbed my bag and hurried out of the office. On the train that night, I stared at the window. The city lights blurred as tears filled my eyes. I felt dirty. I felt small. I felt powerless. I kept hearing his words. Don't be afraid of me. But I was afraid. Terrified. The next morning, I could not eat breakfast. My stomach twisted. When I reached the office, my hands were shaking. I sat at my desk, trying to look normal. Sarah leaned over and whispered, "Emily, what happened? You look worse." I bit my lip. My eyes filled with tears.
Sarah, he touched me again.
Her face turned pale. Oh my God. This is serious now. You can't stay quiet. I looked down. I'm scared, Sarah. What if he fires me? What if nobody believes me? She held my hand under the desk. I believe you. And I'll stand with you. But Emily, you must protect yourself. That day, I could barely focus on my work. Every time I heard his footsteps, my heart raced. Every time he passed by my desk, I held my breath. I thought, this is not just work anymore. This is fear. This is survival. At home that night, I called my mom again. She asked, "Sweetheart, why do you sound so sad these days?" I almost told her, but I imagined her worried face. I imagined my dad's anger, and I stayed silent. Instead, I said, "I'm just tired, Mom. Work is hard." She sighed. "You're stronger than you think, Emily. Don't forget that." Her words made me cry after I hung up, because I didn't feel strong at all. Days passed. Richard kept trying. A hand on my shoulder, a touch on my arm. Sometimes he brushed against me as if by accident. I started avoiding him. I left meetings early. I ate lunch outside the office. I even hid in the bathroom once, just to escape. But no matter how hard I tried, I could not escape forever. One Friday evening, I was the last person in the office. The lights were dim. The air was heavy. I was printing some reports when I heard the sound of shoes behind me. "Working late again, Emily?" His voice made my skin crawl. I turned slowly. "Yes, sir. Just finishing up." I tried to keep my voice calm. He stepped closer. "Always so hard-working. You remind me of myself when I was young." I forced a smile. "Thank you. I'll be leaving soon." But he didn't move away. He leaned closer. His hand brushed my hair. I flinched. "Please don't," I said softly. He smiled. "Don't be so shy, Emily. I like you. I can help you grow here." My chest tightened. I felt trapped. Was this how it was going to be forever? I whispered, "I just want to work. Nothing more." His smile faded. His eyes hardened. "You'll regret saying no to me," he said coldly. And then he walked away, leaving me shaking in the dark office. That night, I could not sleep. His words kept echoing in my head. "You'll regret saying no to me." I tossed and turned, my mind filled with fear. Would he fire me? Would he make lies about me? Would he ruin my career? The city outside was alive with noise. But inside my apartment, I felt trapped in silence. The next day, Sarah and I met for coffee. The cafe was warm, the smell of fresh bread filling the air. But my hands were cold as ice. I told her everything, every word, every touch, every threat. She grabbed my hands. "Emily, this is abuse. You can't let him keep doing this." Tears streamed down my face. "But I'm so scared, Sarah. He has power. I don't." She looked at me firmly. "Then we'll find a way. Together." Her strength gave me a little hope. But the fear inside me was still louder. The following week was worse. Richard started punishing me at work. He gave me extra tasks. He criticized me in front of others. He said things like, "Emily, I expected better from you." I wanted to scream. I wanted to say, "You're only punishing me because I said no." But I stayed silent. The office buzzed with life around me. Phones rang. Keyboards clicked. But in my world, everything was falling apart. One day, I left the office early. I walked through the city streets. The air was cold. The wind stung my face. I stopped at a park bench. I sat there, hugging my coat tight, and I cried. I cried because I felt weak. I cried because I felt dirty. I cried because I did not know how to fight back. A little boy walked past with his mother. He laughed loudly, his voice pure and free. I watched him and thought, when did I lose that? When did I lose my freedom? That night, I looked in the mirror. My eyes were tired. My face was pale. I barely recognized myself. I whispered, "This is not who I am. I can't live like this." But what could I do? If I spoke, he might destroy me. If I stayed silent, he would keep hurting me. Either way, I was trapped. The next day, something happened that pushed me to the edge. We had a meeting in the conference room. Everyone was there. Richard sat at the head of the table. When I gave my report, he interrupted. "Emily, your work is sloppy lately. Maybe you're distracted." The room went silent. People stared at me. My cheeks burned. I wanted to cry, but I stayed quiet. Then Richard smirked. "Perhaps she needs extra guidance." His eyes locked on mine. Nobody else understood the meaning, but I did. I felt my stomach twist in shame and rage. After the meeting, I ran to the bathroom. I locked the door. I leaned against the wall and cried silently. "He's breaking me," I whispered to myself. "He's taking away everything, my pride, my peace, my voice." When I left the bathroom, Sarah was waiting. She hugged me tight. "Emily, I can't watch this anymore. You must stand up." I wiped my tears. "But how?" She looked into my eyes. "We'll go to HR. Together. You're not alone in this." Her words gave me courage. For the first time, I thought, maybe I can fight back. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. My heart was heavy, but a small flame burned inside me. A flame of anger. A flame of courage. I whispered to myself, "I will not let him destroy me." But deep down, I knew facing him would change everything. The morning felt heavy. The sky was gray. The streets were wet from last night's rain. As I walked to the office, my heart pounded in my chest. I kept repeating to myself, "Be strong. Be brave. Don't let fear win." But my hands were shaking. My stomach churned. I wanted to run away. Yet I knew I couldn't. When I reached my desk, Sarah looked at me. Her eyes were steady. "You ready?" she whispered. I swallowed hard. "Yes," I said, even though my voice was weak. We walked together toward Human Resources. The hallway felt longer than ever. Every step echoed in my ears. Finally, we reached the door. I hesitated. My chest felt tight. Sarah touched my arm. "Emily, you are not alone." Her words gave me strength. I pushed the door open. Inside, the HR manager, a woman named Mrs. Jenkins, looked up. "Good morning, Emily." "Sarah, what brings you here?" I froze. My mouth went dry. But Sarah squeezed my hand. I took a deep breath. And then I spoke. Mrs. Jenkins, I need to report something. About Richard. Her face grew serious. Go on. Tears filled my eyes. My boss has been touching me. Without permission. He says things. He threatens me. The words spilled out. The shame. The fear. The truth. Sarah nodded beside me. She's telling the truth. I've seen how scared she is. I've heard her cries. Mrs. Jenkins leaned back, silent for a moment. Then she said firmly, Emily, thank you for telling me. This is serious. We will investigate immediately. My hands shook. What if he finds out? What if he fires me? She shook her head. You're protected. We will handle this carefully. For the first time, I felt a small wave of relief, like a tiny light in a dark tunnel. But that relief did not last long, because Richard found out. That evening, he called me into his office. His voice was sharp. Emily. In my office. Now. I froze at my desk. Sarah looked at me with worried eyes. Do you want me to come? She whispered. I shook my head. No. I'll face him. My legs felt weak as I walked to his office. The door closed behind me with a heavy click. He stood by the window, his back to me. The city lights glowed behind him. When he turned, his face was cold. So, he said slowly, you went to HR. My throat tightened. I tried to speak, but no sound came out. He stepped closer. Do you know what you've done? Do you know who I am in this company? I whispered. You hurt me. You touched me without permission. I couldn't stay silent. His jaw tightened. You think they'll believe you? You think they'll side with you over me? Tears filled my eyes. I don't care if they believe me. I had to speak. His face twisted in anger. You're finished here, Emily. Do you hear me? Finished. He slammed his hand on the desk. The sound made me flinch. My whole body trembled. But then, the door opened. Mrs. Jenkins and another senior manager stepped inside. They had heard everything. Richard froze. His face went pale. Richard, Mrs. Jenkins said coldly, we've been investigating. We've received multiple complaints about you. And now, we heard your threats with our own ears. My eyes widened. Multiple complaints? I wasn't the only one? Richard stammered. This is nonsense. She's lying. But Mrs. Jenkins cut him off. Pack your things. You are suspended immediately. Richard's face turned red with rage. He looked at me. His eyes burned. This isn't over, he hissed. I stepped back. My heart raced. But Mrs. Jenkins stood in front of me, protective. Yes, Richard. It is over. Security came and escorted him out. The office was silent. I stood there, shaking. I couldn't believe it. It was over. Or was it? That night, I walked home under the dark sky. The rain had stopped, but the streets still glistened. The air was cool, fresh, but my heart was not calm. Even though Richard was gone, his words haunted me. This isn't over. Would he come after me? Would he try to ruin my name? Would I ever feel safe again? At home, I sat on my bed. I hugged my knees to my chest. Tears slid down my cheeks. I thought about everything. The first day I met him. The first touch. The shame. The silence. The fear. And now, the confrontation. I whispered to myself, it's not over. The fight has just begun. The office felt different after that night. Quiet. Strange. Almost as if a storm had passed, but the air was still heavy. People whispered in the hallways. Some looked at me with pity. Some avoided me, as if my truth was a dangerous thing. But Sarah never left my side. She smiled at me. She walked with me to lunch. She whispered, "You did the right thing, Emily. Don't forget that." Her words kept me standing. But inside, I was tired. The HR team questioned me again. They asked about every detail, every touch, every word Richard had said. Each time I spoke, it felt like I was reliving the pain. Sometimes I cried in the small interview room. Sometimes I sat in silence, my hands shaking. But I forced myself to keep going, because silence had almost destroyed me once. I could not let it win again. One day, as I was leaving the office, a coworker stopped me. Her name was Lisa. She had always been quiet. She looked around nervously, then whispered, "Emily, I just want to say thank you." I frowned. "Thank you? For what?" She swallowed hard. "For speaking up. He hurt me too. Years ago. I never had the courage to say it." My heart stopped. "You too?" She nodded, eyes filled with tears. "I thought I was alone. But you gave me courage." We hugged right there in the hallway. Two women who had carried the same secret. Two women who finally felt less alone. That night, I sat on my bed and thought about her words. Maybe my voice was weak. Maybe I had cried and trembled. But still, my voice had reached someone. For the first time, I felt a small piece of pride. A tiny light inside me. But healing was not easy. Even with Richard gone, I jumped whenever a man stood too close. I felt sick when I walked past his old office. At night, I had nightmares. I dreamed of him standing over me, smiling that cold smile. I woke up sweating, my heart racing. Sometimes I screamed. Sometimes I cried into my pillow until morning. The scars were invisible, but they were deep. One weekend, I visited my parents again. The air in my hometown was calm, gentle. I sat at the kitchen table with Mom. Her hands worked on peeling apples. She looked at me carefully. "Emily, something happened. I can see it in your eyes." Tears filled mine. I whispered, "Mom, my boss hurt me. He touched me without permission." Her hands stopped moving. The knife fell to the table. "Oh, Emily," she whispered, her voice breaking. She came around the table and pulled me into her arms. I cried into her shoulder. For the first time, I told her everything. Every detail. Every fear. Every tear. She held me and said, "You're my daughter. My brave girl. None of this was your fault." Later, Dad joined us. When he heard, his face turned red with anger. "Why didn't you tell us sooner? We would have protected you." I wiped my tears. Because I was ashamed. I felt weak. He shook his head. "No, Emily. You are not weak. You stood up. That takes more strength than you know." Hearing those words from my father, it felt like a heavy stone lifted from my heart. Back in the city, I started therapy. At first, it was hard. I sat in silence for whole sessions, unable to speak. But slowly, words came. "I feel dirty. I feel broken. I feel afraid all the time." My therapist listened with kind eyes. She told me, "Emily, trauma is heavy, but it does not define who you are. Step by step, you will heal." Her words became my lifeline. Step by step. At work, things changed too. The company introduced new rules. They trained managers about harassment. They encouraged employees to speak up. Some people still avoided me, but others smiled with respect. I realized I had become more than a victim. I had become a voice. One evening, Sarah and I sat at a cafe. The sky outside was painted orange by the sunset. She looked at me and said, "You know, Emily, you're stronger than you think." I smiled faintly. Some days I still feel weak. She shook her head. "No. You cried, yes. You shook, yes. But you spoke. That's not weakness. That's bravery." I looked down at my coffee. Her words warmed me. For the first time in a long while, I believed them a little. But one night, I received a letter in my mailbox. No name. No return address. Inside, it said only one thing: "This isn't over." My blood ran cold. Richard. I dropped the paper. My hands shook. Fear returned, darker than before. Was he watching me? Was he planning something? I sat on the floor, hugging myself. The battle was not finished. It was just moving into a new chapter. The letter haunted me. I could not sleep. Every sound outside my window felt like footsteps. Every shadow looked like him. For days, I carried fear like a second skin. But then, something shifted. I sat on my bed one morning, holding the letter in my hands. Tears ran down my face. But then, I whispered to myself, "No, this isn't how my story ends. Fear will not own me." I folded the letter, put it in an envelope, and went straight to the police. The officer looked at me seriously. "This is important," he said. "If he tries to contact you again, we'll take immediate action." For the first time, I felt the system standing beside me, not against me. That night, I slept a little better. Still scared, but with a spark of courage. Weeks passed. Richard's name disappeared from office whispers. The company announced his termination. He would never return. I sat at my desk, staring at the email. Tears welled up in my eyes. It was over. The man who once held power over me had none left. I wasn't just free from him. I was free from the silence. Healing, though, was not a straight path. Some days, I felt strong. Other days, I broke down in tears. But slowly, the nightmares faded. The shame loosened its grip. And when I looked in the mirror, I began to see myself again. One afternoon, Lisa, the woman who had thanked me, came to my desk. She held a small card in her hand. It said, "Survivors are stronger together." She smiled and said, "Emily, I joined a support group. They're looking for speakers. Would you tell your story?" My chest tightened. The thought of standing in front of people made me shake. But then I remembered, my voice had helped Lisa. Maybe it could help others too. I said yes. The first time I spoke to that group, my hands trembled. I could barely look up. But as I spoke, something happened. Heads nodded. Tears fell. Hands reached out to hold mine after. One woman whispered, "Because of you, I'm not afraid to tell my husband what happened to me." In that moment, I realized something powerful. My pain had a purpose. My scars carried a message. And my voice, shaky, trembling, but real, had the power to heal not just me, but others too. Months later, I stood on a small stage at a community event. The microphone felt heavy in my hand. I looked at the audience and said, "My name is Emily, and I am not a victim. I am a survivor." The room went silent. My heart raced. And then I told my story from the beginning, not with shame, not with fear, but with strength. When I finished, the room erupted with applause. Not because I was perfect, Not because I was unbroken, but because I was real. Now, when I walk into my office, I walk taller. When I see a new employee looking nervous, I smile and say, "You're safe here. And if you're not, you can always come to me." I became the person I once needed. And here is the truth I want you to hear, whoever is watching this. If someone hurt you, it was not your fault. If someone used their power against you, you are not weak for breaking. You are strong for surviving. Silence is heavy, but your voice is stronger. Even if it trembles, even if it shakes, even if it feels small. Because when you speak, you are not just fighting for yourself. You are giving courage to someone else who is still in the dark. I look back now, and I see the girl I once was. Scared, broken, ashamed. And then I see the woman I am today. Still healing, yes, but standing tall. No longer hiding. No longer silent. Richard may have taken my peace for a while. But he did not take my future. He did not take my voice. And my voice is louder than his silence ever was. So if you are listening to me right now, please remember this. You are not alone. You are not broken. And you are more powerful than you know. Because survival is not weakness. Survival is strength. And your story, yes, yours, might be the light someone else needs to find their way out of the dark.